Over and over again, an illegal immigrant crosses the border and someone gets hurt. This time, an officer of the law. President Trump is fighting to build a wall to keep us safe and put America first. But Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are standing in the way, playing politics instead of protecting America. Tell them enough is enough. Border wall now. House Freedom Fund is responsible for the content of this message.
All right, News Roundup Information Overload Hour. That a new ad from our friends at the Freedom Caucus here with our Hannity Watch, the new radical power brokers in the House of Representatives. We welcome the Freedom Caucus members. We have Jim Jordan of Ohio and Freedom Caucus Chairman Mark Meadows is with us. Things a little bit different there, I guess.
A little bit different, Sean, but you know what? It's still the same with your listeners across the country. You know, the people's voice will not be drowned out.
Well, you know, I'm looking at these numbers today, and, you know, I started my new year by pointing out to people that we have an information crisis. When you've got forces so against this president on television, on newspapers, the broadcast networks, the cable networks, it's every second, minute, hour of every 24-hour day. It's how can we hate Donald Trump? Well, how do you hate Donald Trump when he literally is fighting to protect our southern border from drugs, drug trafficking, human trafficking, a whole host of crimes, terrorists, criminals wanting to cross into our country? I just see him standing strong as the right thing to do, and Nancy Pelosi saying, I'll give you $1, shows the American people she doesn't seem to really care what happened to Officer Singh the other day.
No, she doesn't, Sean. This is Jim here. She sure doesn't. They are much more, and you said this better than anyone, they are much more concerned with stopping the president than they are with helping the country, than they are with building the border security wall. In spite of the president's record, 312,000 jobs. Part of the reason there's those kind of job creations is because we cut taxes and reduce regulations. And what does Ocasio-Cortez and the Democrats want to do? They want to increase taxes and increase wages. So you look at the president's record, taxes down, regulations down, economy growing at 312 jobs last month, lowest unemployment in 50 years, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh on the court, out of the Iran deal, embassy in Jerusalem, hostages home from North Korea, new NAFTA agreement. And all they're focused on is what? Introducing impeachment on the first day of session. That is how crazy it is. But we just got to keep telling the truth and keep pointing to the record, and we'll get through this.
Well, I think that's, you know, all those things that you mentioned and much more. But what's really interesting to me is this is not how the Democrats plan to take over Congress. And I think they've got themselves a socialism rising problem, a radicalism problem in their party. And that is, you know, on the first day they're talking about impeachment, or, you know, they want to file articles of impeachment. They want to raise taxes. They want full and complete redistribution of wealth. All the things that they weren't saying on the campaign trail that I told people that they were really standing for is now coming to fruition. My prediction is in 100 days, people will have figured out completely how they are in Congress with one agenda, and that is to destroy, delegitimize President Trump every hour of every day. But while they're doing that, they're not serving the interest of the country, the American people, their constituents. That then becomes problematic. Both of you guys have been there a few years, and if you don't serve your constituents, I don't think you stay there very long.
Well, you don't stay there very long, and candidly, Jim is exactly right. If you look at what this president has done and accomplished, it's nothing short of remarkable. And yet, here we are today with the House majority being so anti-Trump, and quite frankly, they're looking at trying to increase taxes because they've run out of other people's money to do their progressive agenda. And so, you know, it is just very, very disappointing, but it is also one that we have to stand up for because our American values are here to stay as long as you and I and Jim and all the listeners that are out there are willing to stay involved.
Look, the American people are going to have to engage here because on some level, the president, if you want the good news to continue, you know, Jim gives the list better than everybody. You know, rattle off all the president's successes, including the nearly 5 million new jobs created, record low unemployment for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workplace, youth unemployment. These are not small deals. Now the president, I thought we wanted in a politician somebody that's going to fight. the fact that the president's fighting for one of his key promises. How do you see this ending with Pelosi and Schumer just on the wall?
Well, I mean, Sean, if a wall's immoral, why are they not advocating? Why are Democrats not advocating taking down the wall between Tijuana and San Diego? It's not immoral. It's about stopping the president. Everyone knows this makes good common sense. And the president to stand there and fight for this is exactly the right thing. He's going to stand up and do what he told the American people he was going to do. We all know we need a border security wall. So I think we just got to keep making it. How about the GoFundMe page? We just met, Mark and I just had a meeting with Brian Kolfage and what he's doing. Here is a veteran who sacrificed, lost limbs for our country out there with this GoFundMe page. Now it's close to $20 million because the American people say this is good common sense. This is how we need to secure our border, and the president's standing firm for it. So let's just keep making the argument, and I think we can get to a win on this.
Sean, let me piggyback on what Jim just said, because he's exactly right. If protection and security is immoral, then, why does Nancy Pelosi have a security detail? I guess that's immoral too. When we start to look at it, there are two standards, one for the average person on Main Street and one for the protected class here in Washington, D.C. We just heard a story from Brian where he was talking about he's being treated differently than every other person. A disabled veteran's business is being discriminated against by Twitter and others because they're treating him different than actually they're treating Jim and I, even on Twitter with the authentication of our Twitter page. It's wrong. We've got to stand up.
What do you make of the radical shift of the Democratic Party? I mean, there used to be more conservative Democrats. There used to be Scoop Jacksons. There was a time when the parties got along. I don't know what went on behind closed doors. The Democrats thought it was more contentious. The president thought it was more hopeful. They're going to work over the weekend. But, first day of Congress, you got a Democratic congresswoman saying we're going to impeach the MFer. And then it goes on from there. And, then they're introducing articles of impeachment. Then they want to eliminate the Electoral College in terms of presidential elections. Then they want the 51st state. Then you got another Democrat comparing the president to Nazi Germany and Hitler, and then doubles down on it. Pelosi says it's not a big deal, saying we're going to impeach the MFer. Is this what the next 2 years is going to look like?
Probably. I mean, I think the president said it best. Are they going to, investigate and attack him, or are they going to try to legislate? It sure seems like, based on the first day of Congress, they're going to go after, they're going to do the former. I just think it's today's left, Sean. What the things you just rattled off, I think are appropriate. But they applaud Kaepernick when he disrespects the flag. They cheer on Cuomo when he says America was never that great. They embrace Maxine Waters when she says go out and harass anyone who supports our president. Which brings us back to where we started. It's all about going after the president. And for whatever reason, that's just where today's crazy left is, in spite of the amazing record that you and Mark have talked about. So I think we're just going to have to deal with it. I think that's just where the left is today.
So a former Freedom Caucus member, Mick Mulvaney, is now the chief of staff of the president. You guys know him well. Tell us about the president's choice for that important position and maybe one of the harder jobs in Washington.
Well, it is probably one of the hardest jobs just because you've got to keep up with the president. And, I mean, I can tell you he's made phone calls to me at 5 a.m. and at midnight or 1 a.m.
By the way, I will neither, for the sake of what the media speculates about me and the president, I will neither confirm or deny the veracity of the timing of telephone calls.
Well.
And by the way, let's just say this. I've been on the phone with Mark Meadows and others at 1:30 a.m. talking about health care. I can say that, but I won't confirm who else was on the call.
Well, I'm with you on that, but I can tell you, just keeping up with him and his work pace is just phenomenal. But yeah, Mick's a great choice. Candidly, Jim and I have been talking to Mick almost on a daily basis ever since he's taken over on the acting portion of his job. But the other key that we have to make sure that not only Mick Mulvaney has, but this president has, he needs to understand that the American people, the vast majority of them, are standing with him. You know that we've got this BorderWallNow.com petition asking people to go there to actually sign up on the petition to say, I'm standing with the president. We believe that he is doing the right thing, because he's hearing all the opposite right here in Washington, D.C., Sean.
Well, I'll tell you, we're linking it to my website, Hannity.com, borderwall.com petition. All right, quick break. We'll have more with Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows of the Freedom Caucus on the other side. Right as we continue with Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio, Mark Meadows of North Carolina. Now, I know there's a GoFundMe page, and I think they were up to like $20 million yesterday, which I think is really nice and generous of people, but from my perspective, we pay enough money for the wall, and it is, in terms of the actual percentage of the federal budget to stop drug and human trafficking and murder in some cases, because I'm not talking about the 99% of people that just want a better life and don't feel like going through the process legally, but 1% of terrorists and gang members and criminals and drug pushers and dealers and traffickers. We don't need that for this country. Look at Ohio, Jim Jordan, your state. Look at, cities like Cleveland, inundated with heroin epidemics and opioid epidemics. Yeah. And you know what? We owe it to stop the 90% of the heroin coming into the country from our southern border.
Last year alone, 17,000 people who were detained and then arrested at the border trying to cross had criminal records. You're so right. Drugs, gang violence, human trafficking, all that is, we alleviate so much of that if we build the border security wall and if we get control of our southern border. That's what this is about. Ask the police officer Singh, who was, ask his family, ask Kate Steinle's family. That's what this is about. The American people understand it. Most importantly, the President of the United States understands it, and that's why we're in the situation we are. And it would just take the Democrats to just come to the table and say, look, let's do what you've already voted for. You voted for wall funding in the past. Support it now. Instead of just being totally against the president, let's actually do what's best for the country.
No, I totally agree.
Sean, one of the things that they're saying is, well, why didn't he just open back up the government and negotiate? Well, I can tell you two things. The government has been open for 2 years, and we've gotten $0 for the wall. And I can also say this, that the Democrats are entrenched that they want zero money for this. We spend $600,000 eradicating brown snakes in Guam, and yet we're talking about the efficiency of money for border security. Come on, give me a break.
Well, to me, at some point we've got to say, what culpability does the government have? For example, if you have a sanctuary city or state, look at the case of Officer Singh, and we have an illegal immigrant, didn't respect our laws and sovereignty in the country, but also in our criminal justice system for other crimes. As a matter of federal law, they're supposed to be handed over to ICE, to border security agents. They're supposed to be deported, but because of sanctuary laws, well, they actually aid and abet lawlessness and continued criminal behavior that in this particular case resulted in the death of a police officer that has a 5-month-old son. At what point did they bear some of the responsibility by not enforcing the laws of the land?
No, they do. But unfortunately, we're now in a situation where we should have dealt with this, and you've talked about it, Mark and I have talked about it. We should have dealt with this back in March when we had the big spending bill. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, Republican leadership would not go where we all wanted to go and pass those kind of things to deal with sanctuary cities, to deal with our asylum laws, to get rid of the visa laws, to do the things we did. They wouldn't push it. That's when we should have done it right after Chuck Schumer had shut down the government back at the start of 2017. We are where we are now. We should still do those things. Unfortunately, Nancy Pelosi and her left-wing conference are not going to go there.
All right, last word we give to Mark Meadows, considering, well, he is the House Freedom Caucus chairman, and Jim Jordan is not. Jim Jordan was removed from that position under very suspicious circumstances, I understand. But you were term limited out, I guess.
Well, I think both of us are term limited out, but here's what you mentioned this earlier. Jim does the best job of articulating what this president has accomplished. Imagine what he could have accomplished if he had teams of Democrats and Republicans all going in the same direction, supporting him. Now, listen, the stream, he is going upstream right now with a Democrat House. But I'm here to tell you, this president is more resolved today about making sure that we secure our border than I've ever seen. And the American people and your listeners need to show the appreciation to him.
All right. Thanks so much. And honestly, I don't know what Congress would be like, and I mean this in all seriousness, without the commitment of the Freedom Caucus to hold the Republican Party to the promises and the principles that they're supposed to stand for. Too many of them are weak and timid, and frankly, some of them are just absolutely useless. So we look to you guys a lot, and we will be throughout the year as we watch all that is going on. Thank you both, Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows.